What if the fate of an entire galaxy rested on the shoulders of a species no one believed in? When ancient civilizations crumbled under the weight of war, it was humanity, new, untested, and underestimated, that stepped into the fire. This isn't just a story of spaceships and battles. This is about courage, unity, and a fight for survival that will shake the stars. If you're new here, make sure to subscribe to the channel and show your support with a thumbs up by liking the video. Now let's move toward this wonderful story. The skies above Veltris were dark, not because of nightfall, but because the smoke of distant battles had finally reached the upper atmosphere. The once thriving capital of the Allied Star Pact now stood in uneasy silence, its great towers flickering with failing power and its streets nearly empty. Inside the High Hall of Accord, representatives from 12 different civilizations gathered, their faces grim and worn. They had come together in desperation. The Volar Dominion, a ruthless and powerful empire, had pushed them to the brink. Years of war had left their fleets in ruins, their world scarred, and their people broken. The Allied Pact, built on trust and unity, was falling apart. Advisor Niren stood alone at the center of the great circular chamber. Her pale blue skin shimmered faintly under the low lights, and the flowing fabric of her ceremonial robe brushed the marble floor as she moved. Her voice, soft yet firm, echoed across the chamber. Friends, leaders, fellow survivors, we are running out of time. There were no cheers, no applause, only the sound of strained breathing and the hum of emergency lights. Niren was of the Avenari, a race known more for their calm diplomacy than their power in battle. And yet, it was she who had called for this final meeting, a last attempt to prevent the collapse of everything they had fought for. "We have no choice left," she continued. "Our defenses are failing. Our enemies grow stronger by the day. We need help." A stir passed through the crowd. Ambassador Keller of the Grivan, a proud, lion-like species, rose to his feet. His mane had lost its golden shine, now dulled with soot and stress. "We have no more allies, Niren," he said. "Who would come to our aid now?" Niren met his gaze without fear. Earth. Gasps and murmurs rippled through the hall. Earth was a name rarely spoken in these chambers. The humans were new to space travel, having joined the interstellar community only a few decades earlier. They had never taken sides, never fired a shot in the war, never sent ships to the front. Some called them cowards. Others, idealists. Most, irrelevant. From the shadows, Commander Rylus of the Torelli stood and growled. His race, built for war, had lost entire planets to the Volar. His voice was heavy with bitterness. "The humans, they're untested, soft, they've never seen real war. What do they have that we don't?" "Perspective," Niren replied calmly. "They see what we've lost the ability to see. Possibility, creativity, unity and chaos. I've studied them. Their technology is evolving rapidly. Their minds adapt faster than any known race. And most importantly, they still have hope." Rylus snorted and sat down. Others whispered to their aides or stared at their data tablets looking for a better solution, but finding none. "The Volar are not just a military force," Niren said, stepping forward. "They are a machine, cold, predictable. But humans are unpredictable. They think differently. They might be our last chance to win this war." Despite resistance, the desperation in the room could not be ignored. Planets had been lost. Communications between allied sectors were breaking down. The enemy was closing in on Veltris itself. Time was slipping through their fingers. After a tense silence, Prime Counselor Vaylon, the oldest among them, spoke. His voice was a whisper of age and wisdom. "Let the humans decide then. We will send an envoy to Earth." The vote passed, barely, but it was enough. Within hours, a diplomatic vessel was prepared. Niren volunteered to lead the delegation. She was joined by Ambassador Kellor and 2 others, a scientist from the Mirial species and a defense tactician from the insectoid Nerith. Together they set course for Earth, hoping their message would reach open minds and willing hearts. The journey took 5 days through jump space. During the voyage, Niren barely slept. She reviewed humanity's history, studied their wars, their triumphs, their art, and their spirit. She believed in them, more than most humans probably believed in themselves. When the ship entered Earth's orbit, it was met with curiosity, not fear. News networks around the globe lit up with images of the alien craft. People watched in awe as the delegation was transported to Geneva under strict security. Streets were lined with onlookers, children waved, and for the first time in years there was a buzz of something different in the air. Wonder. At the United World Assembly, President Elena Ward received them. A former diplomat herself, Ward, was calm but clearly cautious. Niren wasted no time. With a steady voice and quiet strength, she told Earth's leaders the truth. She showed them what was at stake. Star systems turned to ash, cities crumbled, species driven to extinction. Not with drama or theatrics, but with facts, images, and a plea. The chamber fell silent. No one moved. Then President Ward stood. She looked at the faces of her advisors, her military, her people. Then she looked at Niren. "This war is not ours," she said. "But if we do nothing, it will be. We've lived in peace while others suffered. Perhaps it's time we changed that." With those words, Earth made its choice. Humanity would fight, not for power, not for conquest, but because the galaxy needed them, and perhaps, deep down, they needed the galaxy too. The alien ship descended through the clouds like a silent shadow, its metallic surface gleaming in the morning sun over Geneva. People from every corner of the world stopped what they were doing to watch the news feeds, their eyes glued to screens as the impossible became reality. Hovercams circled the strange vessel, broadcasting its every movement live. It was a sight most people had only imagined in movies. An alien delegation had arrived on Earth. But this time it wasn't fiction. It was history in the making. Inside the ship, Advisor Niren stood near the window, watching the snow-dusted mountains in the distance as the ship glided toward the United World Assembly headquarters. Her expression was calm, but her mind was racing. She had faced many challenges in her long life, but this moment, this quiet arrival on an unfamiliar planet, was one of the most important. If Earth said no, the war would likely be lost. Beside her, Ambassador Keller kept a hand on his belt, a habit from years of military service. He was not comfortable with the idea of placing their hopes in a species so new to space. But there was no turning back now. Earth had been contacted, and Earth had agreed to listen. When the ship landed on the grassy field outside the assembly, world leaders, diplomats, scientists, and military officers stood waiting. Among them was President Elena Ward of Earth, a composed woman in her mid-50s with sharp eyes and a calm voice. As the alien ramp lowered, she stepped forward to greet the visitors with a firm nod. No grand speeches, no rehearsed welcome, just respect. Advisor Niren bowed slightly in return. "Thank you for meeting with us, President Ward." "Thank you for trusting us," Ward replied. "Let's talk." The meeting was held in the Great Hall, a massive circular chamber with tall windows that looked out over the mountains. The alien envoys took their place at one end of the room, their presence drawing quiet gasps from many of the Earth representatives. Some stared in awe, others with suspicion. Cameras were banned from the room, but the world outside waited anxiously for answers. Niren stepped forward, her voice calm and clear. She spoke of the Allied Star Pact and its crumbling state. She described the Volar Dominion, an empire built on domination and fear. She showed images of what had already been lost. Worlds turned to ash, cities erased, families scattered. There was no drama in her words, only truth. The room was silent. Then the questions began. A defense minister asked how far the Volar had reached. A general asked what Earth could realistically offer. A scientist wanted to know about technological compatibility. But one question quieted them all. "Why now?" asked President Ward. "Why us?" Niran met her eyes. Because you're still whole. You still have choices. We don't. We've fought for so long that we've lost more than just ships. We've lost hope. But humans still believe they can change things. And that belief might be exactly what we need. Some were moved. Others remained skeptical. Discussions continued long into the night. Earth's leaders argued over the risks of involvement. Could they protect their own world? Would their soldiers be ready? Would their people understand? In homes, cafes, offices, and schools around the globe, the conversation spread. For the first time in decades, the entire planet was thinking about the same thing. Not a war among nations, but a war beyond the stars. Some said Earth should stay out of it, that the galaxy's problems were not theirs. But others felt differently. After all, how long could anyone really stay isolated while others suffered? Back in the assembly, voices rose and tempers flared. Finally, it was Mason Duval who stood. Once a general, now an advisor, he had seen war from every angle. His voice was calm, but his words cut through the noise. If we stay silent while others fall, how long before we're next? We've built peace on Earth, yes. But what is peace worth if it ends at our atmosphere? There was no cheering, no celebration, just quiet understanding. A decision was made. President Ward stepped out onto the steps of the assembly building the next morning. A sea of reporters waited. The world watched. After careful discussion with global leaders, she said, Earth will join the Allied Star Pact in their fight against the Volar Dominion. We do not take this decision lightly, but we believe it is the right one, not just for them, but for all of us. The reaction was immediate. Across the planet, screens lit up with the news. Some people cried, others clapped, a few protested, but most understood what it meant. The age of Earth's isolation was over. In the days that followed, spaceports across the world turned into hives of activity. Engineers worked around the clock. Factories once used for commercial airships were now building warships. Pilots trained with new urgency. Scientists shared knowledge with alien technicians to create systems that could work across species. Admiral Idris Varro, a respected military leader with a quiet demeanor and razor-sharp focus, was named the commander of Earth's space fleet. He did not smile at the cameras, he simply said, "We're ready to serve." As Earth's first fleet formed above the planet, its sleek, silver ships glinting in the light of the sun, the rest of the galaxy took notice. Humanity had answered the call, not as conquerors or survivors, but as allies. The stars, once distant and silent, were now calling them forward, and Earth was ready to rise. The stars around the Arcanus system burned red, a sign of the nearby twin suns and the endless war that had scarred the region for years. The Allied star pacts remaining, ships floated in uneasy silence near a shattered moon waiting. They were tired, damaged, and low on supplies. Hope had grown thin after losing so many battles to the Volar Dominion. But today felt different. Today, a new fleet arrived. Sleek, silver ships moving with precision and purpose. It was humanity. The humans came in formation, each vessel reflecting sunlight like polished armor. Their flagship, the Resolute, led the charge. It was bold in design, bristling with unfamiliar weapons and wrapped in advanced shielding systems. Other species watched with cautious interest. Could these newcomers truly help? Or were they just another voice in a choir already drowned by war? On board the Resolute, Admiral Idris Varro stood before a circular table, a map of Arcanus projected in soft blue light. His officers were gathered around, each with a clear role in the upcoming operation. Varro was calm, but not distant. He looked each of them in the eye. "This will not be easy," he said. "But we were not called here for easy." The plan was bold. The Dominion's forces had built a central command ship deep in the Arcanus system. It was heavily protected, shielded by dozens of smaller ships and a powerful energy grid. Most in the coalition believed it could only be taken through long and costly attacks. But Varro had another idea: use speed, distraction, and precision. Captain Sienna Ray, leader of the Human Fighter Division, was assigned to lead the first wave. She was young but fearless. Her squadron had trained in tight simulations for weeks. She smiled slightly when given her orders. "We won't just open a path," she said. "We'll carve a road." As the fleets moved into position, tension grew. The older coalition ships moved more slowly, their battle scars still visible. Many of the veteran commanders watched the human fleet with a mix of doubt and silent admiration. No one had seen this kind of coordination in a long time. Then, without warning, the Dominion struck first. Dozens of enemy ships burst from a gas cloud near the outer rim, firing a rain of plasma bolts toward the coalition line. The battle had begun. Admiral Varro wasted no time. "All units, move to attack positions. Follow the plan." The Resolute surged forward, engines burning hot. Captain Ray's fighters darted through enemy fire, forming a wide arc as they targeted the first wave of Dominion defense ships. The sky lit up with explosions. Her voice crackled through the comms, steady and sharp. "Focus fire, break their flank." Across the system, the battle roared. Human ships showed an aggressive style not often seen in the coalition, fluid, reactive, always adjusting. They didn't follow rigid formations. They danced, using speed as their shield and boldness as their weapon. One by one, Dominion ships began to fall. On the bridge of the coalition command ship, Commander Belrin of the Vosari watched in silence. His own species had suffered heavy losses over the years. He had never truly believed that Earth's arrival would change anything. But now, as he watched Ray's squadron disable an enemy cruiser in under a minute, he found himself holding his breath. In the heart of the system, Admiral Varro gave the next order. "All strike groups, engage the command vessel, focus fire. This is our moment." The Resolute led the charge. Its rail cannons launched high-velocity rounds that tore through enemy armor. Shield bursts flashed across its hull, protecting it from incoming fire. Meanwhile, coalition ships, inspired by the sudden turn in momentum, began pushing harder. The tide was turning. The Dominion command ship, once believed to be untouchable, began to fracture. Its outer rings caught fire. Control systems failed. Communications went silent. Then, at last, it exploded. The shockwave rippled through space. For a moment, everything was still. Even the enemy seemed frozen in disbelief. Then, slowly, the Dominion fleet began to retreat. Cheers erupted through the coalition ships. On the Resolute, officers hugged, laughed, and cried. Admiral Varro gave a single nod and whispered, "Well done." Captain Ray, still in her fighter, wiped sweat from her brow and glanced at the stars. "Told you we'd carve a road," she muttered. The victory at Arcanus was more than a win. It was a message. Humanity had not come to observe. They had come to lead. In a few short hours, they had taken what seemed impossible and made it real. Their tactics had brought new energy to the fight. Their courage had lifted weary hearts. In the following days, repair crews from various species worked side by side with humans, rebuilding and rearming. The mood was different now. Lighter. Stronger. Commander Belrin, once silent and skeptical, spoke to Admiral Varro in private before the fleets left Arcanus. "You didn't just win a battle," he said. "You reminded us who we used to be." Varro gave a rare smile. Then it was worth every risk. The road ahead was still long. The Volar Dominion remained dangerous and determined. But for the first time in years, the Allied Star Pact had a reason to believe again, because humanity had arrived, and they were just getting started. The fleet moved through space like a silent storm, dozens of ships gliding toward their most dangerous mission yet. After the victory at Arcanus, the Allied Star Pact had begun to believe again, but Admiral Idris Varro knew that one win did not mean the war was over. Their next target was Viralis Prime, a heavily fortified planet deep in the Volar Dominion's territory. It was the heart of their supply lines and one of their strongest military outposts. If Viralis could be taken, the Volar would be forced to retreat across several systems. It would be a turning point, or it could be a trap. Inside the command deck of the Resolute, the mood was serious. The lights were dim and every officer focused on their tasks. Admiral Varro stood in front of a large screen showing Viralis and the rings of defense satellites and ships around it. "This is where we break them," he said, voice steady. "Or they break us." At his side was Major Leora Kane, leader of Earth's newly formed Special Operations Division. Unlike most soldiers, she didn't shout or wear medals. Her strength was in how she moved, quiet, sure, and always thinking 3 steps ahead. She and her team had trained for months for a mission like this. They would not be part of the main fleet. Instead, they were going to land on the planet's surface and disable the main shield grid protecting the Volar command center. Without that shield, the fleet could strike directly from orbit. With it, they had no chance. The plan was risky. The team would have to sneak past enemy defenses, fight through hostile ground troops, and reach the shield controls before the main battle began. If they failed, the entire attack would collapse. Hours before the assault, Kane met with her squad. They gathered in the loading bay, checking gear and going over the mission. "We land, move fast, and hit hard," she said. "No heroics. Stick to the plan. We bring down that shield or we die trying." Her team included Sergeant Mira Fallon, a demolition expert with a dry sense of humor, Lieutenant Desh Malik, a communications and surveillance specialist, and Corporal Rafe Yulin, the youngest member but already known for his courage in combat. They boarded a stealth drop ship and launched ahead of the fleet, disappearing into the shadows of space. Meanwhile, the main fleet prepared for war. Admiral Varro stood at the front of the Resolute's bridge as ships formed into attack groups. Captain Sienna Ray and her fighter squadrons flew ahead in tight formation, ready to engage the Volar's outer patrols. As the fleet approached Viralis, the enemy was ready. Hundreds of Volar ships emerged from orbit, forming a wall of metal and fire. They had learned from Arcanis. This time they were prepared for humanity's speed and unpredictability. The space battle began with a thunderous exchange. Fighters streaked through the chaos, dodging blasts and returning fire. The Resolute led the capital ships forward, firing round after round toward enemy cruisers. But even with all their strength, they couldn't hit the command center, not with the planetary shield still active. On the surface, Kane's team had landed in a rocky canyon outside the main facility. They moved like shadows through the narrow passes, using cloaking devices and terrain to avoid detection. But the Volar were everywhere, patrolling with heavy armor and drones. Inside the facility, the shield core was guarded by layers of security and powerful automated weapons. The team had only one chance to get through. Sergeant Fallon placed small charges on a side wall of the outer bunker. With a silent countdown, the wall exploded inward and the team rushed through, guns blazing. Alarms screamed. Volar troops reacted quickly, bringing heavy fire down on the intruders. But Kane's team moved with perfect coordination. Malik jammed their signals. Fallon disabled doors. Yulin covered the rear, firing with sharp precision. They made their way through the corridors, room by room, every step closer to their goal. Back in space, Admiral Varro was watching the timer on his screen. "They should be in position," he muttered. But there was no signal yet. If Kane failed, he would have to order a retreat. Inside the shield control chamber, the team found themselves pinned down. Dozens of Volar guards stood between them and the core terminal. They couldn't go around. They had to go through. Kane took a breath, then looked at her team. "We make a line. I'll push forward. Fallon, get ready to blow the core once I reach the terminal." They moved as one. Kane sprinted through enemy fire, ducking behind consoles and pillars. She reached the terminal just as Fallon tossed her a small charge. Kane attached it to the control panel and activated the code Malik had recovered. The shield grid began to flicker. Then the charge detonated. The power went out. In space, Varro's eyes widened. The shield over Viralis dropped in a wave of blue light. "All ships," he ordered, "commence orbital strike." The fleet opened fire. Plasma rounds and kinetic missiles slammed into the Volar base. Their defenses fell apart. The sky above the planet was filled with fire. On the ground, Kane and her team found shelter in a bunker as the strikes hit. They watched the sky light up, knowing they had done their part. When the battle was over, Viralis was no longer the heart of the Volar war machine. It was ruins. And the Dominion, once feared across the galaxy, had suffered its biggest loss yet. The war was not over. But something had changed. The galaxy now knew that the humans were not just allies, they were leaders. And in the dark, where hope once died, a new light had begun to shine.